July 11th, 1944, a field outside Carentan, France. Staff Sergeant Robert Lotz guns the engine of his M4 Sherman tank, designated Cobra King. Through his periscope, he watches the hedgerow ahead, 15 feet of packed earth, centuries-old tree roots, and thorny vegetation thick as steel cable. "Driver, take us through," Lotz commands. The Sherman lurches forward. 30 tons of American steel hits the hedgerow at full speed. The tank's nose climbs. The treads bite into dirt. Higher, higher. The tank's belly armor tilts upward, exposing the thin underbelly to German positions across the field. Then, the grinding metallic snap. German 75mm anti-tank fire slams into the Sherman's exposed undercarriage. The shell punches through, ignites the ammunition. Lotz and his crew have 11 seconds to evacuate before the tank becomes a funeral pyre. They don't make it. This is the Normandy bocage, the hedgerow country, and it's killing the American advance. 5 weeks after D-Day, First Army has pushed barely 7 miles inland. The casualties tell the brutal truth. In the hedgerow fighting during June and July 1944, Bradley's First Army loses 40,000 men killed, wounded, or missing. That's 2,400 casualties per mile of advance. Tank losses are catastrophic. The 2nd Armored Division reports losing 1 tank for every hedgerow penetration attempted. In a single sector, 12 Shermans try breaking through. 8 burn. 4 become trapped, shedding tracks, and are destroyed by German Panzerfaust teams. The mathematics are unsustainable. At this rate, the Normandy campaign will collapse before reaching St. Lo, much less Paris. General Omar Bradley, commander of the U.S. First Army, stands in his operations tent, staring at casualty reports. The numbers mock every pre-invasion estimate. Intelligence completely missed the hedgerow's defensive potential. The bocage wasn't supposed to matter, but the hedgerows have become Germany's secret weapon. Each field a fortress, each hedge a kill zone. Every American advance costs blood the Army can't afford to lose. Engineers tried explosives. Didn't work. Too slow, too dangerous. They tried bulldozers. Germans killed the operators before they could cut through. They tried tanks with frontal plows. The tanks became stuck, exposing themselves for minutes at a time. Nothing works. What Bradley doesn't know, what nobody in First Army headquarters knows, is that 40 miles away, one sergeant is welding scrap metal in a field workshop. A sergeant with 0 engineering training, 0 armor design experience, a liquor salesman from New Jersey who's about to solve the problem that's killing thousands. A sergeant whose absurd idea will break the stalemate in 3 weeks and change armored warfare forever. Rewind to June 7th, 1944. The day after D-Day, the American Sept Corps pushes inland from Utah Beach. The men expect open French countryside, rolling farmland, easy tank, country. Instead, they encounter hell. The Norman bocage stretches for thousands of square miles. Ancient agricultural landscape carved into small fields, each field surrounded by hedgerows called hays. These aren't decorative garden hedges. They're earthen walls 4 to 15 feet high, topped with centuries-old growth. Hawthorn, brambles, oak trees with root systems penetrating 20 feet deep. The hedgerows date back 1,000 years. Norman farmers built them to mark property boundaries and contain livestock. By 1944, they've evolved into natural fortifications more effective than anything German engineers could design. Each hedgerow creates perfect defensive positions. Germans dig into the earthen walls, invisible until Americans are 20 yards away. Machine gun nests, mortar teams, Panzerfaust anti-tank squads. Every hedge provides protection, concealment, and interlocking fields of fire. For American tanks, the hedgerows are death traps. When a Sherman attempts driving through, its nose tilts upward, exposing the tank's vulnerable belly armor, only 1 inch thick. German gunners learn to wait. Let the tank climb. Then fire into the exposed undercarriage, where a single shell ignites ammunition or fuel. If a tank tries climbing over, it bogs down on top, treads spinning uselessly while the hull presents a perfect broadside target. And the Germans are waiting. Always waiting. Feldwebel Klaus Schwarz, 352nd Infantry Division, describes the hedgerow tactics in his post-capture interrogation. We let the Americans come close, sometimes 5 meters. Then we fire Panzerfaust. The Sherman, it climbs like a dog mounting a wall. Very slow, very exposed, easy kill. The casualty reports from June paint a horrific picture. June 8-15. First Army loses 200 men attempting to advance 3 miles. June 16-24. The 29th Infantry Division suffers 3,000 casualties, capturing 12 hedgerows. June 25th, July 7th. In the battle for Saint-Lô, 19th Corps loses 11,000 men, 3,000 killed, advancing 7 miles. Tank losses are even worse. The 3rd Armored Division reports a 40% tank loss rate in hedgerow combat. The 2nd Armored loses 60 Shermans in 2 weeks. At this rate, every tank will be destroyed before reaching Germany. General Bradley requests solutions from Army engineers. They provide 3 options. Option 1, bulldozers fitted to tanks. Problem: takes 30 minutes to cut through 1 hedgerow. Tank crews expose the entire time. Germans kill the dozers before they finish. Option 2, combat engineers with Bangalore torpedoes. Problem: infantry suffers 60% casualties placing explosives under German fire. Too slow, too deadly. Option 3, artillery bombardment to destroy hedgerows. Problem: each hedgerow requires 200 rounds to demolish. First Army doesn't have enough ammunition, and the noise warns Germans of the attack axis. None work. The experts have no answers. Meanwhile, American progress grinds to a halt. By early July, some units are advancing less than 100 yards per day. The British and Canadian forces to the east face similar bocage and suffer comparable casualties. German commanders recognize the strategic advantage. General Feldmarschall Günther von Kluge writes to Berlin, "The hedgerow terrain neutralizes American tank superiority. Every field is a fortress. We can hold Normandy indefinitely." That assessment seems accurate. The pre-invasion plan called for First Army to reach the Seine River by mid-July. Instead, they're still fighting for Saint-Lô, 30 miles from the beaches. Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower privately worries the Normandy campaign is failing. If the Allies can't break through the bocage, Germany has time to reinforce, bring up reserves, perhaps even counterattack and drive the Allies back into the sea. 5 weeks after D-Day, the liberation of Europe is stalling in the Norman hedgerows, and nobody has a solution. Curtis Grubb, Cullen III, is not a genius. He's not an engineer, not an inventor, not a tank expert. He's a 31-year-old sergeant from Cranford, New Jersey. Before the war, he sold liquor for Schenley distillers, knocking on doors, taking orders, making quotas. His education stopped at high school. He never took a physics class, never studied metallurgy, never designed anything more complex than a sales route. When he enlisted in 1942, the Army assigned him to the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, 2nd Armored Division, tank crew, the kind of soldier who follows orders, maintains equipment, and tries not to die. By July 1944, Culin has been in Normandy 5 weeks. He's seen hedgerows swallow entire tank platoons. He's watched Shermans burn. He's pulled wounded friends from vehicles that became steel coffins. And he's furious. July 6, 1944, a field near La Haye-du-Puy. Culin watches another failed hedgerow assault. A Sherman tries ramming through at full speed. The tank climbs, exposes its belly, takes a German 88mm shell to the undercarriage, Explosion, smoke, 3 crewmen don't get out. Culin thinks about winter in New Jersey, remembers his father's car struggling through snowbanks, remembers township plows with steel blades cutting through snow and ice, pushing the white walls aside. That's when the idea hits him. What if tanks had plows? Not bulldozer blades mounted on top. Those already failed. Something different. Steel teeth welded to the front. Multiple prongs that bite into the hedgerow's base, hold the tank level while cutting through roots. Culin sketches the design on paper scrap. 4 steel prongs, each 18 inches wide, welded to a horizontal crossbar attached to the tank's lower hull. The prongs angle downward, digging into the earthen wall's foundation while pushing through. The beauty is simplicity. The tank doesn't climb over, it drives through. The prongs act like plowshares, cutting roots, while keeping the hull level. No exposed belly, no vulnerable underbelly, just straight-through penetration. Culin shows the sketch to Lieutenant Sidney Fay, his platoon commander. Fay studies it. This is absurd. Sir, you're a liquor salesman, Culin, not an engineer. You really think you can design something Army engineers couldn't? The engineers designed bulldozers, sir. I'm designing teeth. Where would we even get the steel? Culin points across the field. There, German beach obstacles, the Rommel's asparagus, anti-invasion barriers from the Atlantic Wall, thousands of steel rails and iron crosses littering Normandy beaches, most already salvaged and sitting in American supply dumps. German steel, Culin says, turn their obstacles into our breakthrough. Fay considers. The official channels won't approve this. Some sergeant's sketch will never pass engineering review. But 5 men died today trying to cross one hedgerow. You've got 3 days, Fay says. Build a prototype. If it works, I'll get you to Bradley. And if it doesn't work, then we keep dying the way we have been. Culin requisitions a cutting torch, welding equipment, and German steel rails from the beach obstacles. He recruits 3 other soldiers, Private Lorenzo Duckworth, Corporal Al Obarski, and Private Roberts, first name lost to history. They start building in a field workshop. No blueprints, no measurements, just scrap metal, determination, and a liquor salesman's idea that everyone thinks is crazy. July 7, 10, 1944, field workshop near La Haye-du-Puy. Culin and his 3 helpers work around the clock. They cut German steel rails into manageable sections, each prong 18 inches wide, 3 feet tall. The cutting torch screams through hardened steel meant to stop amphibious tanks. Now it'll help American tanks advance. The welding is crude, field expedient. Culin has no precision equipment. He eyeballs angles, estimates stress points, hopes the welds hold under combat conditions. The design takes shape, 4 steel tusks protruding forward from a horizontal crossbar. The crossbar bolts to attachment points on the Sherman's lower hull. The tusks angle slightly downward, designed to bite into hedgerow bases and root systems. Total weight, 1,500 pounds. Total cost, 0. All salvaged German steel. Lieutenant Fay watches the work. That looks like something from the Stone Age. Stone Age worked pretty well for a few thousand years, sir, Culin replies. It'll never penetrate roots that deep. Only one way to find out. By July 10th, the prototype is complete. They mount it on an M4 Sherman designated for testing. The tank crew, commanded by Sergeant Joe Laney, volunteers for the first trial run, July 10th, 1944, 1,400 hours. Laney's Sherman faces a typical Norman hedgerow, 12 feet high, 8 feet thick at the base, roots penetrating 15 feet deep. The same type of hedgerow that's killed 100 tanks. Culin, Fay, and 50 other soldiers watch from safe distance. Laney keys his radio. Here we go. The Sherman accelerates, 20 miles per hour, 30 tons of steel and fury aimed at centuries-old vegetation. The steel tusks hit the hedgerow base. Impact. The prongs bite, dig. The tank's weight and momentum drive the tusks into packed earth and root systems. The Sherman doesn't climb, doesn't tilt upward. The hull stays level, belly armor protected, while the tusks rip through like a plow through soil. 15 seconds. The Sherman bursts through the opposite side, tusks trailing dirt and torn roots. Perfect level penetration. The watching soldiers erupt in cheers. Laney backs the tank up, positions for another run. Same hedgerow, different angle. Again, the tusks cut through. 13 seconds this time. Third run, 11 seconds. Culin's absurd design works, but Lieutenant Fay knows the military bureaucracy. An unauthorized field modification will never get approved through official channels. This needs to bypass the system entirely, straight to the top. We need to show Bradley, Fay says. How? Culin asks. He's got 1,000 officers telling him what to do. We're sergeants with scrap metal. I know someone who can get us an audience. Fay makes calls, pulls strings, uses every favor owed. The message works its way up. A field sergeant has a hedgerow solution. Crude, unorthodox, but it works. On July 14th, 1944, word comes down, General Bradley will observe a demonstration. The problem? Bradley's engineering staff has already seen the device. Their assessment? Impractical field modification with no engineering basis. Potentially destabilizes tank balance. Not recommended for adoption. One engineer tells Fay directly, that ridiculous plow will get crews killed. The general isn't going to approve something designed by a liquor salesman. Culin's response? Then let's show him it works before he reads the report. The demonstration is scheduled for 1,000 hours, July 14th. Everything depends on the next 90 minutes, July 14th, 1944. 0945 hours. Testing field near Couvin. General Omar Bradley arrives in a jeep, accompanied by his chief engineer, Colonel James O'Neill, and several staff officers. They're skeptical. They've seen dozens of proposed hedgerow solutions. All failed. O'Neill holds a technical report. Sir, the engineering assessment concludes this device lacks structural integrity. The welds are substandard. The attachment points create stress fractures. And the weight distribution... Let me see it work, Bradley interrupts. Culin stands beside the modified Sherman. 4 steel tusks jutting forward like prehistoric weapons. In daylight, it looks even more absurd, crude, agricultural, utterly unmilitary. Bradley walks around the tank, touches the welds, studies the attachment points, looks at Culin. You designed this, Sergeant. Yes, sir. What's your background? I sold liquor, sir. Shenley's, before the war. Bradley almost smiles. And now you're engineering tanks? No, sir. I'm just trying to stop them from dying. O'Neill interjects. General, this modification violates 3 safety protocols and bypasses standard engineering review. If we approve every field sergeant's invention... Show me, Bradley says to Culin. Make it work. Sergeant Laney's Sherman starts engines. The demonstration begins. Target, a hedgerow that killed 2 American tanks the previous week, 14 feet high, roots like iron cables, German defensive positions on the far side already cleared for testing. Laney accelerates. The steel tusks slam into the hedgerow base. The prongs dig, tear, rip through packed earth. The Sherman's hull stays perfectly level. No upward tilt, no exposed belly. Just straight through force. 12 seconds later, the Sherman bursts through the opposite side. Bradley says nothing. His face reveals nothing. Laney backs up. Takes a second run at a different angle. 11 seconds. Clean penetration. No mechanical failures. No stress cracks. Third run, 10 seconds. O'Neill checks his watch. Sir, standard combat engineers require 30 minutes to breach a hedgerow with explosives. This device does it in 10 seconds. Bradley nods slowly. How many can we make? O'Neill stammers. Sir, I must protest. This design hasn't undergone proper testing protocols. We don't know the long-term structural implications. The engineering review process typically requires... How many can we make? Bradley repeats. Culin steps forward. General, every salvage yard in Normandy has German beach obstacles, miles of steel. We can equip every tank in First Army if we start now. The staff officers erupt. That's impossible. The logistics alone, modifying thousands of tanks in the field violates. The room erupts in argument. Engineers against field officers, bureaucrats against combat veterans. Everyone shouting reasons why it can't work, won't work, shouldn't work. Bradley raises his hand. Silence falls. Gentlemen, he says quietly, I've watched 3,000 men die in these hedgerows. I've lost 200 tanks. And this sergeant, this liquor salesman, just showed me how to solve the problem in 10 seconds. He turns to O'Neill. I want 500 units produced by July 25th. Use every ordnance company in Normandy. Salvage all German beach obstacles. Priority 1. O'Neill stares. Sir, that's 11 days. To fabricate 500, then you better start now, Colonel. Bradley faces Culin. What do you call this device, Sergeant? The men call it the Rhino, sir, because of the tusks. The Rhino, Bradley nods. Good name. You've done something remarkable, Culin. You've saved lives, probably thousands. He shakes Culin's hand. Legion of Merit. I'll process the paperwork personally. After Bradley leaves, O'Neill approaches Culin. His expression is unreadable. Sergeant, do you understand what you've done? You bypassed every protocol, ignored every regulation, created an unauthorized weapon system. Yes, sir. And it works better than anything we designed. O'Neill extends his hand. Congratulations. Now help me figure out how to build 499 more in 10 days. If this story of battlefield ingenuity has you hooked, smash that subscribe button. Every week we bring you untold stories of World War II, the heroes, the innovations, the moments that changed history, and check out our video on the Sherman tank to learn more about the vehicle that Culin's invention transformed. Within hours, every ordnance company in Normandy receives orders. Fabricate hedgerow cutters. Use German steel. Work around the clock. The Rhino program has 11 days to save the Normandy campaign. July 14, 1944. Ordnance depots across Normandy. The fabrication effort becomes the largest crash modification program in American military history. Every welding torch in First Army goes to work. Engineers scour Normandy beaches for German obstacles. Cutting torches scream day and night. Welders work 12-hour shifts. The 102nd Ordnance Battalion produces 60 units in 3 days. The 187th produces 48. The 111th, working around the clock, fabricates 87. Tank crews arrive at ordnance depots with bare Shermans, leave 6 hours later with steel tusks welded to their hulls. The tanks look prehistoric, like armored rhinoceroses ready to charge. The modifications aren't identical. Each ordnance company adapts Culin's basic design. Some use 3 prongs, some use 5. Some mount the tusks higher, some lower. The welds vary in quality, but they all share one feature. They work. By July 23, 1944, just 9 days after Bradley's order, First Army has 500 tanks equipped with Rhino cutters, 60% of the armor assigned to Operation Cobra. The testing data proves extraordinary. Before Rhino cutters, average hedgerow penetration time, 30 minutes with explosives. Tank exposure during penetration, 8 to 12 minutes. Casualty rate per hedgerow, 6 to 8 men. Tank loss rate, 40% in hedgerow combat. Daily advance rate, 100 to 300 yards. After Rhino cutters, average penetration time, 10 to 15 seconds. Tank exposure during penetration, 10 to 15 seconds. Casualty rate per hedgerow, reduced 70%. Tank loss rate, 8% in hedgerow combat. Daily advance rate, TBD, combat test pending. On July 24th, General Bradley briefs his division commanders on Operation Cobra, the massive breakout offensive scheduled to begin July 25th. Gentlemen, Bradley says, we're going to punch through the German line with Rhino tanks leading every column. The enemy has built their entire defense around hedgerows stopping our armor. That defense is about to collapse. July 25th, 1944. 0938 hours. Operation Cobra begins. First Lieutenant James Burt commands Butcher Boy, a Sherman tank in the 3rd Armored Division's Spearhead. His tank sports a 5-pronged Rhino cutter, freshly welded, still smelling of burned metal and primer paint. Burt's mission, penetrate 15 hedgerows in the first hour. Before rhinos, that would be impossible. Today, it's just another mission. 0940 hours. First hedgerow. Driver straight through, Burt commands. The Sherman accelerates. The Rhino tusks hit the hedgerow base. The prongs bite, rip, tear through centuries of growth. 12 seconds later, Butcher Boy emerges on the far side. German defenders fire. Machine gun bullets spark off armor. But there's no vulnerable moment, no exposed belly, no stalled tank waiting to be killed. The Sherman is through before Germans can react. Second hedgerow, 11 seconds. Third hedgerow, 13 seconds. A German Panzerfaust team fires but misses. The tank moves too fast, doesn't present the static target they're trained to hit. By 1100 hours, Burt's tank has penetrated 20 hedgerows. 0 casualties, 0 mechanical failures. The Rhino cutter works exactly as promised. Across First Army's front, the story repeats. Rhino-equipped Shermans punch through hedgerows like tissue paper. German defenders prepared for slow,